All right, guys, in this one we're going to be talking about the histogram. So if you've noticed here in Lightroom, there's this little graph up here at the top that's got like a chart with different colors and can probably be a little intimidating, a little science-y looking. This kind of thing might not be your bag, but don't fear because I'm here to explain it to you, and it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So basically, what the histogram is it's showing you the tonal range of whatever photo you have selected. It's just showing you the range of the light tones and the dark tones in your image, and where most of the tones exist on that spectrum. So let's just take a look at a couple of examples here. We're in the library view, and a quick way to get to the develop view for any photo is if you just have the photo selected, press the D key on your keyboard for develop, and you'll jump right into the develop module. And then if you want to go back to your library, I always hit the G key, which stands for grid, and it takes you to the grid view. So D and G are two quick ways to jump between the develop module and the library view. So I usually use those keyboard shortcuts. Anyway, into this photo here, into the develop pane, you can see we have our histogram here, and this is, like I mentioned, this is the range of light tones and dark tones in your photo. On the right side, this represents the lighter, more exposed, lighter tones of your image, and then over here represents the darker tones of the image. So let's just take a look at a couple extreme examples here. On this one, it looks really blown out and light. You can see the graph is way over here on the right side. This means that most of the tones in the photo are really bright, really light. And conversely, over here, this darker one, you can see the graph shifts all the way over here to the left, where we have a majority of darker tones in our photo. So what this graph does is it's just a visual representation of where all those tones exist. So let's see, let's jump into one here. This is a standard sort of exposed photo. You can see the exposure is pretty good. It might be a little bit bright, but you can see most of the tones sort of exist in this middle area. And now, as we get into the develop module here, a lot of what we do and a lot of what we change is really going to be based on your own personal preference. You know, what I say I don't like, you might like, and there are no hard and fast. There are no hard rules to any of this. So what looks good to me might not look good to you, and vice versa. So back to the photo here. So in this photo, it's set up pretty standard. Most of the tones exist in the middle, and as you can see, as I hover over the different sections of the graph, you can see it sort of highlights these certain areas. And if you'll notice down here in the tone panel, as I highlight one, it highlights the corresponding slider that represents. So right here in the middle, it's highlighting the exposure slider, and as I shift up here, it's highlights, and then this is whites, and then over here is shadows and blacks being the darker tones. And if you want to adjust on the graph specifically, you can actually click and drag here. So in the exposure setting, I'm going to click and hold and start dragging to the left. You can see I'm moving the actual tones to the darker region of the graph, and the image is getting darker. But if I go to the blacks section, click and hold and move that, I'm just moving that part of the graph. And you can see I'm adding more contrast to the image. It's only adjusting that blacks slider down in the tone panel there. It's making the blacks more black, so to speak. So that's one way you can adjust your photo. You can actually adjust the histogram itself, but really these just correspond to the tone sliders down here, which we're going to get into in another video. So that's all the histogram is. Something else that you might find useful as you are developing your photos are these little buttons up here. These are known as the clipping buttons, and they will show you where certain parts of your photo are getting blown out. So let's just go to another extreme example. Let's go back to this really blown out photo here. If I go into develop, if you see the triangle when it's highlighted like this, that means that this particular region, or the highlights, since this is the right side of the graph, this section is clipped. And what that means is if I hover over the square here, you can see it turns part of the image red. And these are all the areas where it's completely blown out, it's pure white, and there's no data there. So it's completely white, it's completely blown out. You can click the triangle, and if you click it, it'll stay on as you go back to your photo. And if I start to adjust these sliders, for example, you can see, if I bring the exposure down, those blown out areas actually go away completely. And that means I'm actually seeing the wall here. I'm not seeing something that's pure white. And you can see on the graph has sort of shifted away from the edge like that, and the triangle is no longer filled in. But as soon as I bring it back up, you can see as soon as the graph pushes into this right side, the triangle gets filled in, and you can see all this red blotchy area. So it's just a tool that allows you to see, what parts of your photo are blown out. And maybe that's something that you're going for. Maybe you're shooting an image of someone who's backlit and you want to have a pure white background. In that case, you might want to see this completely red clipped area in the back. So I'm going to click this and uncheck it. And then conversely, if we shift over to a darker photo, you can see over here, the shadows are clipped because the graph is pushed over to the left side. So if I click this triangle again, and I start to bring the exposure down, you're going to start to see the shadows come in, and it uses blue for this color. And what this means is, you can probably guess that these spots of the photo are completely black. There is no data there. It's just all completely black. So it shows you which parts of the photo have a pure black point. This can be kind of helpful if you're working with a black and white. Some folks like to have a black and white that has a pure white point and a pure black point in the photo. So this is a way that you can switch this on and make sure that you have a small section of the photo that is completely black, just so that you have that good range of tones. That's just one school of thought there. Another shortcut here, double clicking on any point always resets it. So that's a way you can quickly reset something. You can always press the reset button to completely reset your photo back to the original state. And while we're talking about that too, you'll notice here on the left, I only have the history panel expanded for now. We're not going to get into presets yet. We'll touch on those later. I don't really use the navigator much for anything over here. It's just a way to sort of navigate around the photo. I don't really use that. I find it easy to just use this here. Let's see, snapshots, don't use those. History, you can see this is just, it starts keeping a running history of everything you do to the photo, and you can click at any point to go back to a certain time that you had some settings that you liked, or you adjusted something and you didn't quite like it, and you can always go back. So that's what the history is. If this gets too full and you want to completely clear it, you can go up to Develop and Clear History, and it'll completely reset it. Press Reset, reset the photo. You can see Reset Settings, so now we're completely back to square one again. So that is the histogram, and that's just sort of a quick overview of the Develop interface here that we're going to be working with right now. In the next photo, we're going to start working our way down through the tonal section. We're going to start off with the profiles in the next video, and then we'll go over white balance and the different tones in the presence section, the main parts of the basic panel. This is generally the panel that you start with when you start developing a photo. So in the next one, we're going to get into profiles. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave comments. I had someone actually have a question on the last video that I answered in the comments, so that was nice. If I get a lot of questions, again, I might save them up and do a video, a Q&A video, but if they're just one-offs, I'm happy to answer them, so feel free to ask. And thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one. Cheers.